This program is brought to you by Peaceful Warriors Foundation, celebrating the music, life, and stories of veterans. For more information, go to peacefulwarriorsfoundation.org.
That kind of helped me in the draft situation. Well, I guess it's going to be my turn. My grandfather was World War I, my father in World War II, my uncle in Korea, and another uncle had been in the Coast Guard. Now Jim McCloughan was going to be in the United States Army.
The year is 1968. You had just graduated from Olivet College and you accepted a job at South Haven High School, and you were drafted.
Well, yeah, of course I'm all geared up to start my profession. I paid for my own college education. My parents were factory workers and they had 3 boys, so since they couldn't pay for all of us, we each paid for our own education. And here I am ready to start something that I dreamt about for a while, and my whole thought process had to change. I had to understand that now I was not going to be a teacher and a coach, but I was going to be a soldier, so I'd better gear it up to be the best soldier that I could be.
You must have been a shock in that you might have been a little surprised.
Oh, I was very surprised when I even received the letter asking if I would come and take my physical in July. I got that letter in June, and I'd signed the contract to teach in May. So it's teach, whoop, letter to go and get a physical. I know, they're just trying to check to see if I'm physically fit in case they might want to have me in the war, but I'm going to be teaching, and I'm married, and so for sure they won't need me.
But they did.
They did. They only needed 5 people from Van Buren County, when I was one of the lucky 5.
And you won the lottery in that.
I won the lottery.
So your background, you were an athlete in school, and you went to college and you wrestled, and did you play basketball as well?
Yes, I did in high school. I had 11 varsity letters in 4 sports in high school, football, basketball, baseball, and track, and then I had 7 varsity letters in college in football, wrestling, and baseball.
So you had lots of background in athletics, so there was kind of a natural place for you to end up in your job in the military.
Well, I think it helped me to transfer into becoming a soldier and being in the military. It certainly, I had been disciplined through coaching or through, being coached and being in sports, but also I had already pledged a fraternity, and those types of things. So I was quite old and matured compared to a lot of the 18 and 19-year-olds that were going through the basic training at Fort Knox with me.
That was not happening a lot. Yeah, they were 18 and 19 years old. You were what, 21, 22?
22. I was 22 when I was drafted.
And they put you right into the medical specialist school.
Well, that's an interesting story within itself. You don't get to choose to be in those kinds of positions when you're drafted. A draftee was to serve 2 years. A regular Army, that would be someone who volunteered, would have to serve 3 years. They would have an opportunity maybe to choose the military occupational service that they'd like to go into. I do believe, my theory on it is that they looked at my college classes that I'd taken. Preparing to be a coach, I'd taken kinesiology, physiology, anatomy, first aid, advanced first aid, and all strapping and taping. And I think that they thought maybe I could make a pretty good medic. Nothing can prepare you for what you're going to see as a combat medic in Vietnam. But I had a head start, I think, because of those classes. Reason I say that, I was the only one on about 250 graduating from Fort Knox, Kentucky, from my company that went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Me, a draftee.
So you end up in Vietnam. How long for your training before you got to Vietnam?
Yeah, the training, I went from, it's better to give you in months, I went from September, actually was sworn in August 29th, appeared in Fort Knox, Kentucky on the 30th, but then headed for, right after graduation, I graduated on a Saturday, and the Sunday I got on a train and headed down to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, San Antonio. And then with a break at Christmas time, I was there until the first part of February. So I went from November to February there. The actual training itself is 10 weeks, but they had gotten me there too early, so I was trained to drive trucks and Jeeps and things for 2 weeks all over the post there, and so that I really didn't start my training until late into November.
So you were what people that watch the movies would call a medic.
I was a combat medic, frontline medic.
So if you were to describe somebody, what was it that was your job? What was the job of a medic when you got to Vietnam? What do you do?
Well, my job, yeah, a lot of people think that we took care of all the wounds and everything, but I had a whole lot of other things that I had to take care of too. Made sure that the guys got their malaria tablets. Heat exhaustion was a big thing. You could lose a man if they went from heat exhaustion into heat stroke. So I had to make sure that I could do that very well. We had to keep people from going into shock when they got badly wounded, because someone can die of shock. I had to take care of when they'd get impetigo, and what they call trench foot. You know, I had all kinds of things that I had to take care of as a combat medic, other than the wounded and those that needed to be saved from being killed or captured.
2 months in country and you find yourself in that, but that's not a surprise really for a soldier. You never know what's going to happen. You could have been there the 3 days after you got there, right?
Yeah, many people died in the first day they were there. So yeah, but luckily I had been under the tutelage of a couple machine gunners, one by the name of Doug Hatton, who just passed away this last week, and Joe Mittendorf. They were real warriors, and I tell people that I was smart enough to know how dumb I was as a soldier, and that they were talented at what they did, and it didn't matter how many degrees you have when you're in those situations. You better learn fast how to transfer over into becoming that warrior and struggling for your life on some occasions.
It's a hard question, I know. Can you tell us about those 2 days?
Well, it's a long story. Those 2 days are really tough, and we were combat assaulted in, which meant we came in on helicopters. And we've kind of decided that we tried to count up numbers and heads. We had 89 guys, so we were on about 13 helicopters. They couldn't land because it was a hot LZ, which means they were getting fired upon as they were coming in to drop us off. So they made us jump from about 10 feet up. In that particular case, we had some injured as well as, you know, a bad situation coming into getting fired upon. 2 helicopters went down. One, they got the crew out right away. The other one, they couldn't quite get the crew out, so we sent a squad out to protect them while they tried to get a helicopter in and get the crew out. Couldn't do it. So they came back in with the crew, and then we got them out from there. The first helicopter that went down, everybody got out, but this helicopter, they're coming in, and they're coming in from about 200 yards away from the position that we had set up, the daytime perimeter. I saw a guy lagging behind, and all of a sudden everybody got in, and he's 100 yards back, and he collapses. So I jumped up right away. Think about anything, my job now, you know, and I sprinted out to him, slid in next to him like I was sliding into second base. I said, "Where are you hit?" He said, "I'm not hit." He said, "I hurt my knee jumping out of the helicopter and getting thrown to the ground," he said, as we crashed. And he says, I need some help." I said, "Well, hold on to your weapon because you're going up on my shoulders and we're going in." So I carried him and weaved through the crossfire, my men firing at me and the NVA coming behind me at us, and neither one of us was touched, and that's the first man that I saved of the 10 Americans and 1 Vietnamese interpreter in that battle.
How you got the Medal of Honor is a fascinating story in itself, because you were originally in 1969 recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross, correct, which is the second highest award that can be bestowed by the United States Army. And below that comes the Silver Star, and below that comes the Bronze Star. And you got the Bronze Star with a V for Valor, plus the 2 Purple Hearts that you did. At that time, you must have thought that was the end of it, right?
Well, yeah, and the reason I got the Bronze Star is they said that I was only a PFC, and PFCs don't get the Distinguished Service Cross, and they told my lieutenant, put him in for the Bronze Star, and of course that went through very fast. when he told me that, he told me the situation, I said, well, I didn't come over here for any medals anyway. I just want to get home. I want to be a teacher, I want to be a coach, and I eventually want to be a father. So when I came home, I only told my father and my Uncle Jack what had happened, that I'd been discriminated against.
So you knew that somebody was looking at this and that maybe you might end up being upgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross. But instead, you went from the Bronze Star to the Medal of Honor. Now, talk about shockers. That must have been something jaw-dropping.
So in October then, my wife and I are in Denver helping our daughter move into a home, and we get a call from Debbie Stabenow, who had taken over for Carl Levin. So I went from Upton, 2 years, Levin, 4 years, and now I'm with Debbie Stabenow. And I declined the call because I didn't recognize the number. She tried to call 5 minutes later, and I declined again, but she left a message, and it went like this. Hi, Jim. This is Debbie Stabenow, and I've also left a message at your home, but you know we've been trying to get you recognized for your heroism in Vietnam. And the good news is this, your case with 9 notarized eyewitness letters and the rest of the things that Lieutenant Clark has presented came across the desk of Ashton Carter, our defense secretary. He read everything and said, the Distinguished Service Cross is not high enough. He has recommended you for the Congressional Medal of Honor. It still moves me to this day to think that I went from just a PFC to someone who finally recognized my actions, not my rank.
You went, obviously it was presented to you by President Trump at the White House. So, you know, describe the scene a little bit for us. You know, who was there with you, your family, probably some of your former comrades? Tell us about that day.
What a day to be in a room with the President of the United States. It's really surreal, as you can imagine, to be even standing there. And 1,000,001 thoughts went through my mind. My father, of course, my mother, and those types of things. The men who fought that battle, and 10 of them were there, by the way, and 5 of the 10 that were there were 5 of the 10 that I had rescued. And one man I had not seen since I put him on a helicopter in May of 1969. So a lot of things going through my mind, but to be there with your friends and family, the people that are close to you, it's like you're sharing a magic moment, not just yourself, but with those who you love and love you.
It is a magic moment.
It's a magic moment.
We were talking a little bit earlier, and you told me a little bit about the toughest question that you got. And I thought that was such an interesting story. Tell me about who asked you the toughest question that was ever asked of you.
Yeah, well, I've been in front of a lot of people through my years, and they've asked me a lot of tough questions, which I've never been tripped up, and I wasn't tripped up in this one either, but a 6th grader stood up. It was the last question of the day in the school that I had visited and given a talk to. And the kids were all seated out in front of me, and she stood up and she said, "Have you ever killed anyone, and how did it make you feel?" We speak at 125 words a minute, but we think at 525 words a minute, and those 525 things were rushing through my head, those thoughts. And I came to the conclusion that I had to tell her the truth. I had to tell her so she understood as a 6th grader. And I had to leave her on a positive note. So my answer was this. You know, that's the worst thing about war. Sometimes you have to take somebody else's life so that yours is not taken. But I've never been proud of it. As a matter of fact, it's bothered me my entire life that I took somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's brother, somebody's uncle, somebody's friend. But you know what? I was a combat medic, and I got to save lives, and sometimes we would wound the enemy soldiers, and we had to get them patched up so we could ask them questions in the rear area. So I got to save their lives on certain occasions. So I did what I felt I needed to do. I told her the truth. I told her, so I felt she understood. And I left her on a positive note.
You're a teacher. You're a 40-year plus teacher. You taught psychology. You were a coach. That's kind of a wild combination in some ways. I don't run across. Often coaches are history teachers. I don't know why that's happened in my life, but that's kind of went on there.
Or PE teachers.
Yeah, there you go. But you came home and applied for the same job that you had been accepted for 2 years earlier, and you got it, and you spent your life working with kids.
Yeah, and my salary over the 2 years went from $5,800 to $8,200. Just enormous. Yeah, I couldn't wait to get back. I think I'd like to tell you a story that I've told quite often. On the second day, I had been yelled for out in the middle of a rice paddy, medic, and it was screamed, medic! You know, and I got there, and it was a man with a stomach wound. So I can't move him. His organs are going to come out if I move him. I get everything placed where I think it should. Pressure bandage is on. Now I take my water. I'm right out in the middle of a rice paddy. You know, bullets are flying by me, and I got hit in the right arm right here with an AK-47 at that moment, but kept right on working. Dragged him in this trench line. And I'm trying to think about how I'm going to carry this man out of here through the crossfire. I can't throw him over my shoulder or his insides are going to come out. How am I going to do it? And I finally decided I'm going to cradle him and get as low as I can and swerve and weave and maybe not get hit. All of a sudden, this incredible thought came over me. It had been since I was a little boy that I told my father that I loved him. We just didn't do that in the 50s and the 60s. I didn't tell my brothers that. I didn't say that to my friends, especially male friends. Girlfriends, a little different. Maybe. And I had a conversation with my Lord, and I said, God, if you get me out of this hell on earth so that I can look my father in the face and tell him that I love him again, I'll be the best dad, the best teacher, and the best coach that I can possibly be. And this incredible peace came over me. It was no longer in my ballpark. Whatever happened in that battle needed to be happening. And if I got through it, I needed to keep my part of the bargain. In the O'Hare airport, I ran to my father, threw my arms around him, told him that I loved him. He did the same, like we'd been doing that for the 24 years of my life at that particular moment. It was our greeting and our departure. I taught my children, my grandchildren, my athletes, and even my battle buddies. When we talk on the phone, I'll be talking with Joe Mittendorf and I'll say, Joe, I'll get back with you in a couple days. Talk to you then. I love you, Joe. I love you too, Doc. Talk to you then. So we've broken that barrier that it's okay to say those 3 words. And generally when I'm speaking and I tell that story, I give an assignment. That's a teacher for you.
Yeah.
There's probably someone out there that you should have told that you love them. They may know that, but it's been a long time. So I'll give an assignment that you need to do that today. And there's so many ways that you can do it. You can text them or email them or talk to them on the phone, or go and see them if you can do that.
Your dad served in World War II.
He did.
He was so he may have had kind of an idea of what you were coming back from. And as you're getting off there at O'Hare Airport, did you ever talk to him about the comparison of services? Is that something he couldn't talk about?
No, we didn't talk about that. I could tell on my father's face when I got on the plane to leave for Vietnam that was one of the hardest moments of his life, because he knew enough to know that may be the last time that we see each other. And if you can think about that fact that we hadn't said we love you to each other, he probably was even thinking about that at that moment, you know. Gee, I wish I'd have told him before he got on the plane, you know, but you just didn't do that. It's just the way it was.
So service, like almost anybody that served, changed your life.
changed my life forever, forever and ever. And it made me understand how lucky I am to have been born in the United States of America and to be born to parents who knew how to love their children. Yeah, and parents like my father and your father who have fought in wars prior to that, and now it was my turn.
One of the things that we're doing in this Peaceful Warriors Project is talking about not only your service overseas in the military, but when you come home, the service that you give after you come home. You were a teacher, a coach, a counselor, a mentor, a dad, now a grandpa.
Well, I think I'm a peaceful warrior because I understand how lucky I am to be an American, and because I have fought next to those who would give even their life to be able to preserve what we enjoy day in and day out. I've often said, if you want to thank a veteran for your freedom, enjoy it. Don't misuse it, don't abuse it, but enjoy it. Sit around the table, have some great laughs. Sit around the table and eat your hot dogs and hamburgers and enjoy it. But don't forget who gave it to you. I'm a peaceful warrior now because I've been in the position where it wasn't peaceful. It was nothing but chaos, killing, and bleeding. And now I can be peaceful. I can live in a country where I know that I'm going to be okay.
You watched a whole community grow up. In 40 years as an educator, you watched the whole community grow up.
I was coaching grandsons when I left. Grandsons of kids that I'd coached in the beginning.
Many people, Jim, would look at you and say, Medal of Honor, that's what they're going to remember about you. But you, 2 years in the Army, 40 years as an educator, I got to believe you believe that the educator was where you had the most impact.
I've been very lucky. I've had some great, great individuals come through my athletic programs in my classroom, and my children, I couldn't have designed them to be better individuals than they actually are. So, been very lucky. But yeah, you know, you need to look back on, I think, the appreciation and the fact that I did make it, and I was able. I often say I'm blessed more than I deserve. The principal came to me when I was retiring in 2008, and along with him came the athletic director, and they said, I'd had both of them, by the way, on teams, and both of them in class through the years. They said, Jim, do you know how many lives you've touched? And I said, whoa, wait a minute, I'm the lucky guy. Do you know how many lives have touched me? And I stayed in one place, and they just kept coming. So I'm the lucky one to have been touched by so many individuals. And I'm the lucky one to have been able to come back and actually do what I wanted to do. If you think about those 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that didn't come back, what could they have done? How could this world be different if their life had not been taken from them? How can their parents live each year and not have them at special events and at holidays, and when big things happen like the birth of a child? And none of those guys ever were able to be fathers and husbands for the rest of their life.
Last question. Medal of Honor recipient, war hero. What do you want us to understand and know about what you did and why you did it? What would you tell people?
I would tell people that I did that because it was ingrained in me that when I got a job to do, whatever that job was, you do it to the best of your ability. Don't do it halfway. I was wounded the first night and was told to get on a helicopter, and I had gotten close enough to that hill, to Nguyen Hill, to see them come down off that hill. I was about 3/4 of a mile away, and they looked like lava. So I didn't know how many there were, but I knew there were a lot. And so when the head of our company told me to get on a helicopter, and I refused, and he said, why not? I said, you're going to need me. So I did what I was supposed to do. I was given a job. I didn't do it halfway. I did it to the best of my ability, and I'd rather be dead in a rice paddy than in a hospital and find out that one of my men didn't make it because I wasn't there to do my job and to rescue them.
Thank you, Jim McCloughan, for your time. I appreciate that.
This has been my pleasure, and I am grateful to you, and I'm grateful to all that you do for the Warriors. Actually, I'm not doing this now for me. I'm doing it for the 89 men that went into that battle. This is really not mine. It belongs to all of them. It belongs to anyone who's fought throughout the years for the freedom that you and I are enjoying to sit here and realize that artillery and mortar rounds somebody can't rush into my house and with machine guns and tell us that we're going to go here or there or whatever. So I'm really wearing it for all of those 44 million people who have fought for the United States of America since we began being in wars a long, long time ago.
This program is brought to you by Peaceful Warriors Foundation, celebrating the music, life, and stories of veterans. For more information, go to peacefulwarriorsfoundation.org.